Hello and good evening. I'm Emma Woodhouse. Hello and good evening. I'm Emma Bovary. What's my name? Okay, so I want to say I just finished Madame Bovary, but that's not true. I finished it about a week ago, and I'm gonna film this discussion now. I needed to give it time to ruminate. You see, when I first started this book, I wasn't unduly impressed. I just kept comparing it to other books. And actually that went on till the end. So first, we find out that Emma is addicted to the novel. And I'm like, sounds like Don Quixote to me. And I think a really interesting video, maybe for me, maybe for you, I'm not stepping on toes. Anyway, maybe for me, maybe for you, would be comparing the addiction of a female versus male hero in their addiction with novels and seeing how it plays out. So I haven't read Don Quixote. I read about 100 pages in the spring, but I never finished it. Bought it recently though, so maybe that video could be interesting. Anyway, so the video could be about how a female character is portrayed with a sort of fantasy. In tarot cards, we would call it sort of a Seven of Cups card. Eight of Cups? No, Seven of Cups. Like with all these like fantasies that aren't real, that you like really, really want. You know what I'm saying? I think that I am too drunk to film this video. Anyway, so if I put up a picture of Seven of Cups, so all those images in the sky represent things that you want and things that you're working towards having and your desires, but maybe they're not all attainable, okay? And so I really think that Emma Bovary personifies that card, right? And it would be interesting to see how Don Quixote exemplifies that card or challenges it or something else. I really have to read that book. Okay, so first I compared it to that book, and then I was reading along and gotta check my notes. Don Quixote. Oh yeah. Then we got to this paragraph where the councilman is speaking to a crowd, and he's speaking about the benefits of agrarian society and how it should be worshipped. And I was like, Tolstoy alarm, Tolstoy alarm. I just was really reminded of like the Levin chapters in Anna Karenina. What part of the book is that at? I have a little note, just says Tolstoy, Levin. And what should I do here, gentlemen, pointing out to you the uses of agriculture? Who supplies our wants? Who provides our means of subsistence? Is it not the agriculturist? The agriculturist, gentleman, who sowing with laborious hand the fertile furrows of the country brings forth the corn, which being ground is made into a powder by means of ingenious machinery, comes out thence under the name of flour, and from there transported to our cities, is soon delivered at the baker's, who makes it into food for the poor and the rich alike. So yeah, very Tolstoy-esque. And I was sort of I had a thought when I was reading it that they really hit you over the head with morals in these 19th century books. So they'll have these whole political chapters. They will just talk about the government and go off on a tangent, and like Trollope does it, where you just have a whole chapter in Parliament for some reason. And I like that. I like the lack of subtlety with the moral there, you know? Because you compare subtlety today and subtlety yesterday. So their subtlety was in framing a sentence and in not saying the point of the sentence, right? And they weren't, but they couldn't shy away from the political, right? And today that's flipped on its head. Today what we do is we speak forthrightly in our sentences, but the political is all hidden and avoided, and it just, and innuendoed, you know? So maybe the Americans have converted us from hating sex to hating politics. They're the new Victorians, the Americans. Okay, I swear I'm gonna cut this all out because I'm too drunk and I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, so this book is about the bourgeoisie, right? It's about how they're terrible, and about how they don't have any passion, and about how you can't have dreams if you're a bourgeoisie because your temperament is not built for it. Yeah? Okay. So, as I was reading, oh my gosh, I gotta talk about science. Okay, no. But as I was reading, two main themes emerged. Okay, so the first was, it's a condemnation of the bourgeoisie. Every page, yes, check. Number two is the pain of dreams of passions in the face of mediocrity. So again, 7 of Cups, right? Good. Okay, so I think one of the things that I missed in this first reading of Madame Bovary is the importance of the character of Homais, because he is a shining star at the end of the novel, and I sort of glossed over him when I was first reading. Like, he's this pharmacist, he's like in the way, like, I don't care about him, get out, I want to see friggin' Emma trying to seduce some gentlemen, but he was there, he's talking about his stupid politics, and I may have missed the point, you know? Okay. So, oh shit, okay, so am I supposed to, spoiler! Okay, so Emma dies from taking the arsenic from Homais. Homais, who represents the crux of the bourgeoisie. So thus, the bourgeoisie killed Emma. It's the main takeaway from the novel, okay? Bourgeoisie kill anything good, fun, passionate, and Emma Bovary. Oh yeah, I want to talk about science. Okay, so I'm a scientist. Well, I was in a previous life. Now I'm more of a professional, not so much a scientist. I don't experiment. I don't know the meaning of arsenic. Anyway, so science in the book. In the 19th century, I had a talk with a history friend of mine because history in this, or not history, science in this book is like super symbolic. Okay, so we've all read Frankenstein, right? And science there is like, oh, too much power grasping, oh, whatever. But it's like this horror book, okay? And I think people fail to reconcile the fact that science was sort of terrifying in the 19th century, and it took away people's faith. It replaced faith in the church, faith in God, faith in everything, because you could explain things through natural means. And for the average person, that was irreconcilable and scary. And so when science was so prevalent in this book, I was a little surprised because it's not a science book in the way that Frankenstein is. But it's still this immense foreboding presence, right? Science, okay, we're gonna roll it back here. Okay, so there's a scene in the book where Charles the husband of Madame Bovary, the Mr. to her Madame, or I guess he's the Monsieur to her Madame. Monsieur Bovary, he's never called that. He is egged on by Homais to pursue science and make scientific discovery, do a scientific experiment on a patient. This patient has a club foot, and Homais finds like this research that says, you know, it's curable, and he and Charles convince this man, this like 60-year-old man who's lived a full life with a club foot, who's perfectly fine with his club foot, that he needs to get this surgery to improve his life. And so there's this sort of like guilt, like G-I-L-T, guilt to science, like, oh, it's like this fake glossiness, it's gonna make everything great, but then when you peel back the layers, it's like this horrible like lies that are being told to people, right? And that's like what science is, right? So he performs this surgery on this man with clubfoot, and he's a terrible scientist. He doesn't understand the procedure, and he doesn't understand why he's doing the procedure in the first place. So obviously surgery goes wrong, but while he was performing science, that was the only time in the book that Emma Bovary respected him. What does that say? I don't know. Tell me in the comments, why does she respect him when he becomes a scientist? Anyway, so it fails. The leg goes gangrenous, has to be cut off. And Homais still writes an article about this, and he comes off pretty successfully. Whereas Charles is like, he loses some clients, and he gets like, everybody makes fun of him, and it did not go well. And this other doctor shows up and is like, oh, you don't know what you're doing, young man. So, and then of course Emma loses respect for him as well. So science is something that inflames the passion. Science is something outside of faith. Science is, what is science, and why is Homais good at it? Okay, so that's the other thing, is that Homais, the perfect bourgeoisie, is good at science. He wins, spoiler, he wins the Legion of Honor because he's super successful in science, right? So a perfect bourgeoisie doesn't have science, or doesn't have passion, but is truly good at science. I think that's the secret right there. That's the answer. I'm much too drunk. Okay, so is there anything else I wanted to say about Bovary? When I was reading this book, I think one of the reasons I found hard to get into it is because I don't like their French. I don't like the way they write. I don't like their sentimentalities. I don't like their stupid government. So my forays into the 19th century have been pretty much English or Russian. And they're two very distinct types of social structure. So in England, you have the really stable monarchy with a strong parliament, so everybody feels represented, right? And then in Russia, you have like the serfdom that won't die, and the corrupt government, and it's like two ends of a spectrum, basically. That's what it feels like to me, okay? And then I think since I was a child, so I read The Three Musketeers and The Hunchback of Notre Dame when I was before puberty, okay? And so it's been a while since I've read something produced by the French. But the difference there, so politically, they went through the French Revolution, tons of turmoil, and then they go up into a republic and a monarchy, and I don't even know the order, but in this book they're currently a monarchy under one of the Napoleons, and that's where the whole rising bourgeoisie needing to be crushed comes from. It comes from the French, and the French have a certain sentimentality that neither the Brits nor the Russians have. It's just different. It's a different perspective in the 19th century, and I know some people will say that nationalist tones aren't like really a thing, but they are, and you can totally feel them in this book. The other point I wanted to make was that this book, gotta take a drink. This book is not a story about virtue. This book is not Test of the D'Urbervilles. This book is about money, and it's about class. It's about the bourgeoisie. And the reason it is because Emma's downfall doesn't come when she has an affair. It doesn't come when she has a second affair. It comes when she starts extending her credit. Okay? This book is about the banalities and the sort of unlived lives of the bourgeoisie. It's not about virtue. In Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Tess is struck down and crushed by society's perception of her loss of virtue. In Madame Bovary, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what people think, and it doesn't matter how Emma acts. It matters how Emma spends money. And that's the real takeaway from the book.